It's the game before the big game. Sunday afternoon hoops with Joel Embiid and company traveling to Milwaukee to face the Giannis-less Bucks here on the game again before the big game. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers pregame show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And you make sure you go to Bet365 so you can hammer all your bets for your football team against the stinking Kansas City team that's going for a three-peat that the Birds have to stop. Do all of that once again at Bet365. It's never ordinary. Pre-game show here. Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck, Devon Givens-Bree, all of you in the chat, thank you for hanging out with us on this Sunday afternoon. I see it already, guys, in the chat. INS, Eagles by 21.
Go Birds, baby.
Mike Gavini, love the Eagles gear. Folks, we're not crazy. We know too, but we're here to do a job, and that we have to do. And by the time we're done, the game will be getting underway. We'll be all situated in our spots that we need to be to watch the Birds take care of business against the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll get our predictions in the post-game show. We'll give all that to you later on. But first, fellas, we talked about the terrible performance, the no-show performance, Derek, that took place on Friday night in Detroit. And right now, the Sixers against a now Giannis-less Bucks, another All-Star out for his team. And while the Milwaukee Bucks do have Damian Lillard, Brook Lopez, recently acquired Kyle Kuzma, they cannot, once again, come out here on national TV. And as Kyle said on Friday, in Hubie Brown's final game, they cannot no-show this one. They cannot. They should not.
Oh,
they better not.
Are we sure they can't? Are we sure they can't? I don't think they will. You know, last time they had a truly, truly dreadful performance was against the Nuggets. They came back with a strong effort after that. I do think, for the most part, Nick will have them ready to go. I think there will be a competitive spirit that was lacking in the first half on against the other day. Am I confident in that? Certainly above 50% confidence level. But you know, anything could happen. This is I was not expecting for their 12th game or whatever it was with the big three to come out with that stinker of a performance. And it really is like, it's one thing for the offense to not be in sync. It's another thing to miss shots. I can live with all of that. It really was 100% the defensive effort that was lacking the other night, and that just can't happen again. I agree with you. It shouldn't happen again. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say that it can't happen again.
I think the fun thing covering this Sixers team is that they make it impossible to rationally analyze anything that they do, right? Like, I would love to sit here and say, this is a bounce back scenario, and this is a game that they should come in and Joel Embiid should be fired. But like, we said all that stuff on Friday, right? It was one of their first opportunities in quite a long time to play with the big three. I know Yabu was out, so you're down one of your main rotation guys and a starter tonight, which we'll get to at some point in a little bit. But these guys there is no real rhyme or reason that I can figure out to when do they play hard, when do they play well, when do they get up for a game, when do they not get up for a game. Like it used to be with Joel specifically early in his career, we could say national TV game. He gets up for those. Friday night, national TV game, ESPN. I know it's the Cadeless Pistons, but he went out there and took a dump on the court for 24 straight minutes in the first half. So I look through the numbers, right? I look at the trends and I say, hey, Milwaukee's been really struggling lately, right? I think they've lost 5 out of 6, I want to say. And obviously Giannis being out also has a big impact on that. He is the straw that stirs the drink for them on both ends of the floor. So it should set up for you get to work through some things. You get an easy win because it's a team that's struggling and is without their best player. And then you look at the season the Sixers are having and you say, well, maybe that'll happen. Or maybe they will just all collectively forget how to play basketball, show no desire to play basketball, and lose. So just as Derek said, flip a coin. Here we go. Fun time.
Yeah. And that's the tough part. You know, we'll sit there and while you guys at the arena, I'll say to Rich, yeah, I kind of feel good about this one against Miami. And then they go out there and they do what they did against Miami. And you come back and you get a performance like that against Detroit, where you do, as we talked about, that was the 11th game for the big three out there on the floor together. And then those games that they played, at least the example of a 7-3 record gave a little bit of hope going into a Pistons game where, once again, it's a winnable one. They're right in front of you, 4.5 games at the time as far as the play-in spot. And you're saying no Cade Cunningham, Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey all out there. It just made sense for you to at least think that they would show a pulse, as we have here on our thumbnail for that game. But for them to give up the amount of points that they did in the first quarter, 78 in the first half overall. And Kyle, as you wrote in your post-game story, that the effort after the fact takes away, it's all taken away because of what you didn't do in the first 24 minutes of the game to put yourself once again in the hole. It's kind of a microcosm of the season. They dig themselves into this type of hole. They give you a little bit of, hey, I'm going to fight back. They win their 4 straight. And then they come out there and they give you a performance like that one after losing to Miami in another, again, close and winnable game. This has been what this season has been all year long. 11 games under 500. They'll win 4 in a row somewhere along the stretch again. And then we'll be right back where we are here again, just simply talking about them sneaking into the play-in, and then there's the season.
Yeah.
Just a frustrating year all around.
To Kyle's point, though, I feel like I can't predict a gosh darn thing, which isn't what you're supposed to say when you're an analyst of a team. But like when you come out and give up 78 to the Cade Cunningham-less Detroit Pistons, like flip a freaking coin. I have no idea what's going to happen. You're right. Giannis being out should make this game very winnable, but they could also just not give a damn. And who knows? Who knows?
I would say one of the things that I need to see personally is some sort of defensive cohesion, right? Like these guys have
100%.
No excuse to be as bad as they were defensively on Friday night, right? Oh, by the way, change to the starting lineup, which is an interesting wrinkle. The Sixers sent it out themselves and then said correction. So we'll get to that in a minute.
I feel like that happened like a week ago too. I feel like it's happened a couple times now.
So what was I saying? Sorry, that caught my eye, and now I'm
talking about the defensive. Defensive.
So yeah. I understand the stretch where you're playing Reggie Jackson and Kyle Lowry, and it's Yabu and Bona are your centers, and you just don't have any reliable depth. I can understand why every game turns into a shootout, right? And night one, where Joel comes back, they're playing with the big 3 again, and we're sitting here saying, hey, look, they're getting used to these coverages. They had a lot of different principles that they haven't used for a lot of this season because Joel hasn't played. I'll give them a grace game, right? And say, I don't like it. I didn't enjoy watching them stink at defending, but let's give them a couple games. Well, to come out on Friday against that version of the Pistons and stink it up defensively to that degree, that's not acceptable. And so you come out here against the Giannis-less Bucks, I want to see everybody locked in on this is where I'm supposed to be. This is when I'm supposed to do it. I need Joel to be positioning himself well at the rim in drop coverage. I need him when he's going to step. I want him to step aggressively and come up at the level and, show the arms, show size. So it makes it hard to get through on the passing angles. You just want to see the basic stuff getting done. And frankly, the transition defense is probably the greatest place to start, right? Because as Derek brought up our last show, they are dead last in transition defense. And I think what makes it so glaring to me is not even the stuff off turnovers. It's not the stuff off of their misses. It's when they score and they should be back and get set and teams just run right by them and they're getting layups and they're getting open threes. And that part drives me absolutely insane. And that's how you let teams that are not filled with offensive firepower, that do have their stars out, if you let them leak out, if you let them get cheapies and open looks before you can get back, that's how you let bad teams look a lot better than they are. So you need to do the bare minimum, the basic stuff, as Devon said, to show a pulse. Because if you do that, you make life easier on yourself, and it becomes a snowball rolling down the hill. Look at that, a cameo from the cat on Derek's end. You just have to help yourself, and then the rest will, fall into place naturally. But they've done a really poor job of helping themselves all year.
I just want to say, because I don't want to spoil because we're not at the starting lineup segment, so I don't want to spoil it. But there's been some panic when Kyle said there was a change. It is not Kyle Lowry. That's all I'm going to say. It's not Kyle Lowry, but it is a change. There are just people panicking in the chat. I just want to clarify.
I got you. So I'll just add to the defensive part of it because it goes hand in hand too. Bucks are going to miss shots. You have to defensive rebound. You cannot give up 21 offensive rebounds again in a game like this to give them second chance points. Brook Lopez, while Giannis is out, good rebounder. Bobby Porter's going to stick his nose in there. Kyle Kuzma, probably a guy who's re-energized at least for the first couple of games of his Bucks tenure here because he's on a new team.
On that one, Devon.
just in terms of helping on the glass there. And they have so many guys that are going to get in there again and stick their nose and try to get those boards and get those second chance opportunities. And when you play against the Sixers, it seems like it's so easy for the opposition to just get in there and pile up and pad their offensive rebound stats against this basketball team because they don't. So they need to team rebound. Again, we saw for a stretch there where they were doing really good and helping one another out. If Joel Embiid can't jump, two-hand board. Everybody else get in there, snatch those rebounds. You know Kelly Oubre is going to get in there. His problem is he just goes up with the one hand, but he does attempt to get those boards. But it drives us all nuts, not just us four. It drives everybody else nuts in watching how they do it. So please, for goodness sake, rebound the basketball and not give them second chance opportunities to give yourself, again, a chance to get out in transition. Maybe you're the one catching them off balance, catching them sleeping, catching them not in a defensive position to stop you in transition. Take advantage of those opportunities. That's why they're so huge. And that was a big part of why that was one of the parts why they lost on Friday to Detroit. A big number, 21-7 is just ridiculous. And I have to believe that they hammered that home when they all got together for their practice and their film session, and of course, any kind of.
I sure hope so, because if I would realize it's a problem, then that would be an even bigger problem.
The good news here is that the Bucks pretty much don't even try for offensive rebounding. They're the worst offensive rebounding team in the league. I think that's mostly schematic, so they can try to get Brook back in transition. With Giannis out, that should be even worse because you're not putting any pressure on the rim to open up some of those lanes for wings to come crashing down. So it might get better today just based on sheer matchup. But they're also capable of just falling asleep and giving up giving up offensive rebounds to a team that doesn't even really try for them. So again, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the other guy that has been Jared McCain, of course, was the big story. Yabusele, certainly another big piece, but coming out of nowhere to steal some of that shine with McCain out and Yabusele playing, but missing some time as of late. Justin Edwards has been fantastic. And we've talked about even before the trade deadline, how last year, Kyle, you were on it pretty quickly. Derek, too, about Ricky Council getting his contract converted to a standard from a two-way. And we were on this one pretty quickly as this guy started to really show that it looks like an NBA player. Justin Edwards, yesterday, according to Keith Pompey, the Inquirer was going to it looks like it was going to happen. And the Sixers finally put out the press release that they have, in fact, moved his deal from a two-way to a standard NBA contract. Well-deserved, showing the outside shooting, the defensive stuff that looks like that might translate in the long term for this kid. And once his body catches up to him, he's still 19 years of age, right? So once his body starts to mature a little bit and he puts some muscle on him and just continues to show some more confidence out there on the floor, we'll see what he turns into. But Kyle, he has really earned this opportunity here to get that contract turned over to a standard NBA deal.
Yeah, he's been excellent. And I think the thing that gives you confidence moving forward that this could be a potential long-term player for this team is that nothing that he's doing is like, oh man, that feels like nonsense, right? Like this is just a guy who caught fire for a month and he shot like crazy and you're overpaying him or a scenario like that. This is a kid who has shown good instincts on both sides of the ball. He's shot the ball well and has a projectable shot, right? Like it's the quick release at his height, his comfort, relocating. He's not a movement shooter, right? Like he's not a guy that's like a JJ Redick type that's going to come flying around screens. But I think if you just have him come off of a basic handoff or, a quick flare screen, something like that, he's comfortable in those type of scenarios on top of the standstill stuff. So that gives him some versatility. You can move him around the floor a little bit offensively. And then defensively, I think the thing that says it all is that the head coach has trusted a rookie to be taken on top assignments, right? Like generally, you're going to put those guys in pretty low leverage situations. And he hasn't always succeeded. I think my biggest complaint so far has been just the lack of discipline with the reach-ins and, getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar. But he slides his feet. He fights to get over screens. He's getting into guys' chests without necessarily committing those type of aggression fouls. It's been more on the reach inside when he is committing fouls. And so you can see the mold of like the perfect modern role player around stars, right? A guy who can attack a closeout, create for himself in a pinch late in the clock, who's okay being kind of a fourth, fifth option type on the floor, being a release valve for the offense, and someone who defensively I think is a pretty versatile and big and athletic enough defender that wants to take on those challenges. So all that adds up to a kid that really earned this opportunity. We will see what's going to happen with the contract situation moving forward, because Derek, you probably have a better handle on this. This is a 1+1, right? And then they probably will have some further conversations down the road on what that turns into.
Yeah, I would guess they're almost guaranteed to decline it, not because they don't want Justin back long term, but because in the summer you can get him back on a 4-year deal. That could be using non-bird rights to give him a 20% raise over this year. That could be part of the non-taxpayer mid-level if they have some left and they use it. Either way, you can get him back on a 4-year deal. So I think it's probably going to end up just being a rest of season minimum contract because I think he has earned a longer term deal. The only real question I have is whether he would be interested in the 4-year deal that they're offering him. He might want to just play out one more year and hit free agency. So if he's not willing to negotiate a 4-year deal after this year, that's when the team option might get picked up. But it would be mostly because they believe that he won't want to sign the favorable 4-year hinky special or just above hinky special contract they would try to get him on.
Yeah. So, and just looking at the type of guy that he is, we haven't seen a lot of him with Joel Embiid. What have we seen? Just a handful of games, of course, with him, with Joel Embiid. And Kyle, when you're talking about the movement guy and the catch and shoot that we've already seen with Maxey and even Paul George, Yabusele, we haven't even really had a chance to see him at his best with the best group out there outside of starting with the 3 guys the other night against Detroit. And he just, that's where we've talked about a lot of those players coming in the offseason, from Caleb Martin to Eric Gordon and some of the others. It's once again playing off of Joel Embiid, seeing some double teams, finding guys. And Justin Edwards made a 3 on a cross-court pass to Joel Embiid, saw a double team, skip pass across the floor. Justin Edwards in the corner, catch in front of the bench, knock it down. That's what we want to see. The problem is, of course, that we haven't seen enough of Embiid on the floor to really get a good sample size of it. But all of it just seems like it translates. And once he's got his body right, he's so young, and he may not be a starter. He's probably going to be a rotational piece, of course. But it's really cool to see, because, man, when we saw him in the summer league, we were like, I don't know how long this guy's going to stick, even with the G League, and how that'll work out. And here he is getting his contract guaranteed for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, and like just the local angle makes it a really cool story too, right? Like I think we talked a bunch about that in the summer, even as he struggled. It's like, man, it would be cool to just have one, because there have been so many guys, not to hit on a sore spot here, so many guys that have been local guys who either we wanted them to draft or talked about them drafting, or people, fans were like, go after this guy because he was good at Temple or Nova or wherever it might be. Obviously, the Nova Knicks are reaping the benefits right now of that strategy. But for the Sixers to have a little bit of a hometown success story of their own, that is one very small, very, very small silver lining in this horrible, horrible season that they're having. So, great for Justin that he's taken advantage of the opportunity that was given him, because he's been transparent about, and he lost a lot of his confidence during that year at Kentucky. He thought that impacted him in the summer league. And so to find that somewhere along the way is a credit to him, that he's able to, get back in the gym, get some reps in, and find himself again, because this could have gone a very different way. He could be fighting for his career in the G League, or, maybe even overseas if things had gone poorly for him to open this year.
And while I'm sure they wish their season was different, it's what it is. He's only been able to get on the floor, Derek, because of all the injuries that they have suffered, that the kid has had to step up sooner rather than later. And with George being out, of course, McCain out for the season, Caleb Martin missing a lot of time before he was traded, he was thrust into the opportunity. And even, again, part of the show favorite, Ricky Council IV, we like to have fun with Rick. Ricky at a point was also having those struggles where Nick Nurse had to go to Justin Edwards over Ricky Council. Yep. So he needed a lot of things to happen, and he took advantage of each one of those.
Yeah, and it really is like you mentioned, in Summer League, I was very skeptical. Like to the point where I wasn't sure if he was going to be worth a two-way slot. I just didn't think he could move offensively, with the ball in his hands quick enough. I didn't think the first step was there. Defensively, I worried about the lateral quickness. Those two things, unless a shot is elite, was going to make it real tough to be a role player. I think he's just been better, both with the ball in his hands and especially on defense. But also, for a 21-year-old, and I know it's not super young for a rookie, but that's still young enough, and he's inexperienced enough for him to take the angles that he takes, for him to have the change of pace that he has at that age. It's real encouraging. And are we sitting here telling you he's a future starter long term? There would have to be outlier development to get there, but I think the makings of a role player are pretty easy to see and pretty easy to get to the point where I am excited for him to be here next year and hopefully beyond that. This draft class that the Sixers just had with McCain and him and Bona as well, who we at this point probably think should be the third string center when they're healthy or backup center when Yabu's playing power forward. To walk away with that draft class, you want to talk about small silver linings. That is certainly one of them. And it's not even really all that small, like especially McCain, obviously, but all of them factor into your long-term prognosis. And if you're sitting here saying like, all right, what do you need to actually be relevant again next year? Having that depth that you pretty much just pulled from a draft class is important. It's not going to matter if the big fella, and not only the big fella, but the big three, will include Paul George in there, don't show up and don't impact the game in a way that you expected. But if they do, having that depth is really, really important.
And just to stay on, before we get to the starters, just to stay on the personnel, Chuma Okeke, of course, I got it right this time, Kyle. 10-day contract the other day with the Sixers. Now, according to Jake Fisher, friend to the show, David Roddy, former Sixers draft pick, sent to Memphis on draft night. Was that the Anthony Melton deal?
Yes.
That was the Anthony Melton deal. David Roddy, 10-day contract for David Roddy with the Philadelphia 76ers, just to add some more, I guess, some front court help, get a look at a guy who was a first round pick. Has done some things in the NBA, but he's now been moved around quite a bit over these last few seasons and a few trades and some acquisitions there. So, Derek, your thoughts on 10-day for David Roddy?
Dang it, I'm really sucking on. Anyway, yeah, look, he is a small.
That'll be good for the audio only listeners right there.
In terms of height, he is a short power forward, bigger forward. Like he is a big forward. He has some obvious physicality to him. He shot the ball reasonably well this year. It's on such small sample, I don't really want to give too much into it. Only 30.8% from 3-point range over the season. And I think if, like Atlanta thought he was a reliable 3-point shooter, they probably don't move on from him. But that is going to be a massive question mark. But, big power forward. He uses his size and physicality well, and we'll see whether or not he can be anything on offense.
The most important part of signing David Roddy to a two-way contract, or not a two-way, a 10-day contract,
means you can play Jared Butler.
Can play.
Yes.
Because if I see Kyle Lowry take the floor as the first guard off the bench tonight, I am going to lose it. I am not going to be having a good time. So, David Roddy, whatever you bring to the table is fine, my brother. But if you get Jared Butler on the floor by opening up the ability to play a two-way guy, thank you. Thank you for your service.
You've done your job.
Need it. We all need it.
Yep, you've done your job. All right, let's get to the starting lineup tonight. Kyle already gave us a heads up of what things did look like beforehand and what things look like now. Yabusele initially in the starting lineup, but now Justin Edwards, according to the Sixers, will be taking his place.
Look at Bree with the side-by-side graphic right there.
That's why she's the best. So Embiid. George,
Not only do you
Edwards,
get the
Oubre, and
information on the
Maxey.
starting lineup, but you don't have to look at us anymore. It's a win-win. It's a win-win.
What, our beautiful birds gear? Come on.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. So, yeah, he gets to start once again. This is the starting lineup that we saw against the Pistons on Friday night. Not a good showing by that starting five. Justin Edwards not the problem, of course. It all starts and ends with the big fellas. So, hey, I mean, these are the four that you expected. Justin Edwards, I'm perfectly fine with him getting the nod. Wouldn't have had a problem if it was Quentin Grimes, but certainly Justin Edwards in this spot, no issue for me.
I'm interested to see, I keep saying this, if Grimes is able to, at some point, slide into the Oubre role in that starting lineup. I think for many reasons it won't happen, but I think if you put, especially if it's Yabu and you have the size in the front court, if you have that much shooting in theory on the floor and you're not giving up a ton defensively, that's intriguing to me. We'll see if they ever get there.
Yeah, it is interesting. I would love to hear Nick's explanation on Edwards over Yabu. Not that I necessarily disagree with it, especially for this matchup. Like I said, despite Brooks' size, they don't really play huge in either stature or in rebounding. But it is interesting. I think we all just assume that Yabu would sort of stay in that spot for the rest of the season. So, we'll see if this is a game-to-game thing or something he's thinking about more often.
Interesting. All right, let's get to the super chats here before we get to our pregame picks. Ryan Z, of course, personnel conversation. Better see Ricky get minutes today. Go get him, Rick.
That's right.
Especially if they come out there with no freaking effort like they did the other night. Like, absolutely cannot staple him to the bench.
Yeah, no. Throw the guy on the floor. Get some run. Jack DeWhite with a super chat. Embiid is supremely talented. He looks like, he's a big dude. Looks like Tarzan. Hasn't been in good shape since college. He and Luka need mirrors. Well, I mean,
I don't think conditioning is the issue right now.
No, not right now.
And all three of us have been around him his whole career, right? When we're around him, you can tell when he is not in shape. That was not the problem Friday night. That was purely effort and want to. That was the issue.
100%.
No, he's in the best shape he's been in since probably he came back from the foot injuries.
Yep, he's doing handstands and cartwheels.
Oh boy, here we go.
Let's
Don't
wait.
Get me started,
Let's wait. Let's get to our pregame picks, courtesy of Bet365. Pregame picks segment, again, brought to you by Bet365. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Here are the picks for today. We're kind of simple today. 25 points. Tyrese Maxey has done so in 17 consecutive games. And Damian Lillard, we know he's going to get a lot more volume with Giannis out. So as a result, minus 120. So you're going to have to lay some money on it. But Tyrese Maxey, 25 plus. Damian Lillard, 3 + 3 is made. We hit on Friday by the skin of our teeth. Tyrese Maxey getting that extra assist there late before they sat down after being blown out. And that one, minus 120 for this game tonight. 25 points for Maxey. 3 + 3s for Damian Lillard. Our pregame picks brought to you by Bet365. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, fellas, we are almost there for game time. Just real fast before we get to Hubie Brown calling the game. Kyle, Hubie Brown, man. Hubie Brown. He's the man.
Big respect to Hubie Brown. Final game today. I think the best thing that I could say about him as an announcer is that in an environment where this is not always the case, unfortunately, he genuinely always loves the game. And even when he is critical of people during a game and talking about shouldn't have done this, it always feels like it's coming from a place of like, that guy's cheating the game. He's not giving what he needs to the sport of basketball. And I think you can always hear the reverence he has for basketball in his heart. Been great getting to listen to him for my whole life. And I hope that he has a wonderful time in retirement. I hope that he gets a good final game today to call.
Yeah, you can't have his final game being him complaining about effort. You just can't do it.
Can't do it. Can't do it. So the broadcast is going to be a lot around Hubie Brown. So everybody enjoy it. One of the best conversations I ever heard him have was, I think it was Woj at the time was still with Yahoo. And that's when he had the vertical. And he had Hubie Brown on his podcast. And it was one of my favorite episodes to listen to because Hubie it's Hubie. And he just, the way he can tell the story.
Knows everything and everybody, Devon.
It was fun. All right, that'll do it for us, everybody. We'll be back after the game. Yes, we will be back after the game. Again, the game before the big game. So we'll have our post game. We'll break it all down. We're going to be getting ready just like all of you. But we thank you for hanging out with us here. Presented by Bet365. Once again, use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment's never ordinary at Bet365. We'll be back with you post game. Sixers Bucks. Let's see a little effort, fellas. This starts off the day, the sports day in Philadelphia.
Go Birds!
Exactly. We'll see you after the game, everybody.
We all silly like the mayor.